everybody, and welcome to another episode, a broadcast if you will, of GameGuru MAX's live broadcast number 78, where I get to show you some of the internal developments that have been going on in the last 7 days. And of course, if you're a pre-order user, you get to play with all the juicy goodness on a Friday when we release a regular cadence around 6 PM to midnight, depending on how much testing is required for the build. But before we get into anything else, just want to make sure that everyone can hear me fine. Some people have been saying they can hear me before I even spoke, which was very nice of them, but it'd be great if you can hear me speak if you can. There's a bit of a lag time on the live chat as I see it, so I'm just looking for a we can hear you, so thank you very much. Is it Tom? So, yeah, the first one that I read at least. So the format of this broadcast, pretty simple. If you're lucky enough to be attending live, you can ask your questions, just pop a question mark at the end. And towards the end of the broadcast, I'll check out, see if I can find any questions and answer them live. The ones I can't get to, there's always a few questions that come in later on that I can't get to. I'll put in the Game Guru forums, along with the recording of this broadcast, so you can peruse it later on at your leisure. So let's run the software. I want to show you some stuff. Again, wouldn't say why it's hanging out, but it's certainly work in progress. This is something that I'm working on. I'm pretty happy with it so far. Quite a bit of a way to go before I can draw a line under it. I'm just going to load up a level I've been working on. This is just my little test level. And already right away you can see something different. So I've got a character here. I've got him in sort of a test loop. It means I don't have to kind of run around finding characters to shoot every time I do a test. So I've basically set him up for a very specific area. And so what I'm actually demonstrating here is a replacement to the current ragdoll system. You may have noticed that sometimes the ragdoll do silly things. Fall awkwardly, body shapes contort, sometimes their leg gets stuck in a wall, dangle from the ceiling. Funny as heck, but not really what you want, what you expect from, say, a modern game. So we looked at some games, contemporary games, and realised a lot of them, they don't even use ragdoll that often. They use a lot of staged animations based on circumstances. So we thought, well, you know, no sense reinventing the wheel, let's try something similar. And work so far has been very encouraging, and I want to show you where I am so far on that plan, and hopefully what you get to play on Friday, if not this Friday, certainly next Friday. So let me just go into the importer first, just to show you the different animation sets. I apologise for the super white body. This was really just thrown in last minute, you know. So let me just go to the animations here. Forget this one. This is just something that's just a sort of a palette refresher before I get into the death animations. So we have let me just speed up a bit so we're not spending ages watching these. So you've got a back animation, so when they shoot, then also like a bit of a leap and back. And then you've got hit him in the stomach, then it hits something like a wall and then slides down the side of the wall. Then we've got hit from the rear and then launch from the rear. And then you've got again, you've been shot from the back, but you hit something solid like a wall and you slide down the side. And then you've got hit from the side, and then a bit of a bolt from the side, face down, hit from the left, and then hit from the left, but then face down. So all those basic things. The face down ones, the latter ones, the idea is we're going to detect slopes. And so if you hit them from the side, it chooses the forward face and just darts forward. But I think you'll agree that we're not leaving it to chance now. We're going to have some nice death animations for whatever happens to this character, whether shot from the front, from the back, from the sides, and the obstacles that this character may encounter. Which brings me to the crux of what I've been working on. It's all very well just playing an animation based on the direction you shoot the character from. But environment plays an enormous role as to which animation you can get away with playing without clipping into the geometry every 5 minutes, which is what I've been working on. So if I run the scene now, so here we go, and I just stay here for a bit. It does two things. The first thing it does, it scans the nav mesh to figure out if it's a walkable area, it's also likely a good place where you can collapse in a heap. And so that's the first scan. It figures out where the nav mesh is and where you can fall. The next thing it does, you notice how it's sloping down the thing? That's not accidental. The next thing it does, it places a physics box within that area you've just calculated. That way, you're always actually contorting to the terrain surface, or indeed any other surface that the character may find themselves on, such as falling down some steps. Now if I just rerun it, so it starts again from this thing, and I'll show you some secret sauce. So I'm going to go into my special AI management mode, show a navigation mesh. Now look, ta-da! These are the two clever, you'll never see them in the game, but the big one is deciding where the floor is, or the available floor, and within that floor, it's figuring out I can put a physics box within that, and then I use that to detect whatever the obstacles, the ground obstacles are, and then the character will align to that physics box, just like so. And as it creeps along, you see it's now got a flat floor, so it continues to follow it. And as you can imagine, this is just the side one, because this is just for my own testing purposes. But the idea is, based on, let's say, a player here firing, you have what's called a preference table. It's basically, I'm calling it the death database. Whereas, if you shoot a character and it's up against a wall, it will prefer the one you see now, the slide along. But for whatever reason, let's say there's no room, as he slumps to the right, there may not be any room there. And the scanning of the nav mesh and creating that floor box area I was just talking about, it would tell me that. It would say, nah, you can't do that. So it chooses another death animation, one that will fit. It's the final frame, you know, the final frame of the death animation, that describes the area where you want to look for. So I don't mind if you penetrate geometry along the way, because it's pretty fast, but when they rest, I don't want a foot being inside a wall, and other equally unconvincing things. And so basically with a large collection of death animations, which have different final frame profiles for where the box would be placed, you can get away with pretty much any scenario, provided you got enough floor area to say, justify having the character stand there in the first place. You should be able to find a death animation. And the way the system's been designed is you can use any death, provided you've got death in the animation name, it will add it to the database. So in the future, let's say an artist wants to add more death animations, just add them to the animation list. And this system will automatically pick them up, figure out that final frame, and then figure out where, if at all, it can be placed. And if it can be placed and it's the first item of the preference table, then yes, it chooses it and plays it. Which of course, if you think about it, means you could import a character of your own and import your animations, providing that animation has the word death in it, it gets to use this new, what I'm calling the Ragdoll Plus system. And then finally, if after all the scans and you've put the character on a pinhead and there is no floor, only then will it revert to the original Ragdoll. And then at that point you really don't have any choice, but you still want the character to collapse in some kind of realistic physics heap. But I would say 98% of the time we'll get away with finding an animation that fits into the scenery detail. And I think as a result, your games will just feel a lot more realistic when characters don't actually have the hand wrapped around their own neck or dangling from the ceiling by a toe. So that's what's happening. I think that, you know, there's lots of different things in the AI, but I think let's just get this one done so it looks good, and then we can move on to all of the other edge cases, and I'm sure there will be a few, but let's get this one in place before we start exploring those edge cases and how relevant they are. So that's what I wanted to show you today. Amazingly, we're still at that 11-minute mark once the broadcast started. It seems quite spooky that I must have trained myself to speak for exactly 11 minutes after the introduction. But I ain't knocking it, because it's a pretty good opportunity to answer a few questions, of which we have 4 official minutes, probably 5 unofficial minutes, and how long it takes before I realise the clock has gone over the 20-minute mark. So let's see if we've got any questions. Let's see if we can answer all the questions during the live chat, in which case the forum post I put in later won't have any answers in it, because I've dealt with them all. So far I can't see any question marks, so we're already halfway doing the chat. It suits me fine. If there's no questions, it means I have answered every question in the universe up to broadcast 78. So you can hear me, that's great. First question's coming in from Nomad Soul. Will you be adding depth of field DOF for the March release? There's no plans to do that, but I can reveal depth of field is already built into the Wicked engine. It's practically a setting and maybe a slider, or maybe 2 sliders. But no, there's no plans to put it to the UI. There's no plans to make it a priority for the March release. However, as I said, it's not a huge deal, so let us get the software to a point where we like it, and if we do find there's some extra time or some breathing room in February, we'll have a quick look at it. I haven't even switched it on to see if it's got the right level of quality and fidelity that it would actually contribute to the overall effect rather than subtract from it. So give us time on that, but yeah, that's probably inevitable. If it's a good effect, that will be in GameGuru MAX at some point this year, but it's not planned for the roadmap for March. Okay, another question mark. Here we go. This from J Birdman. Will you be giving NPCs clipping soon? They currently walk through walls. That's not possible. Please put it in the issues board, very small level, very clear step by step, maybe a screenshot or two, or even a video will be even better, showing NPCs walking straight through a wall. We have a nav mesh for things like that. The nav mesh is used to plot a path. It can't ever plot a path through empty space. It always follows the nav mesh, so it should follow around any walls you place down. It should walk around them. So I'd be very interested to read your report on how you got them to walk through the wall. I think perhaps they could potentially walk through terrain walls if you just had like one vertex shoved into the sky. I think I saw a report like that, or maybe it was just that the AI can see through an obstruction like that, but certainly not walk straight through the terrain. So yeah, more info on that would be great. We don't really want people walking through walls for the March release. 3 question marks, thank you very much. And the next question is from Synchro62. Great death anims, but what if they fall from a roof? Again, quite literally, not figurative, but literally, an edge case. If a character finds themselves on the edge of a cliff or a roof, clearly there's no floor for them to calculate a nice landing. At that point, there's what's called basically a weighting factor. And if I think that the floor area available is too small, like less than 20% of what it needs to land on, boom, switches to ragdoll, and then you fall. Now, there's other things we can try. Like, you've already seen like 7 or 8 death animations. Maybe we have some death animations literally for shot them on the edge, then they can rotate so they're facing the cliff dive, and then they do some crazy fall while screaming, and then another animation where they clump to the ground. We already have some animations already created where the characters can jump off a cliff and then hurtle down with a loop and then a nice landing. We have that animation. But good point, we haven't actually considered, you know, like the theatrical Hollywood death fall off a high point. I think that'd be quite good fun to see that. But right now, the current system would just switch it to ragdoll. Same with explosions. If you throw a grenade or explode something and there's a lot of characters nearby, they instantly go to ragdoll so they can fly off into the air. And at that point, I don't really mind too much if the limbs are all broken, because if you've just had a TNT explode in your face, you probably don't have any working limbs anyway. Okay, looking for the next question, and it is from, is it Anders? Yes, Anders Mindorf. Will there be animation logic for the player model, allowing a rudimentary third-person mode such as basic locomotion movement, which could potentially be added onto with scripting? There are no plans to add third-person perspective onto GameGuru MAX, so if you are holding your breath and waiting for third-person perspectives, player models, and all that kind of thing, there are no plans right now to look at third person. There's plenty more things even after March that we're looking to add before we get anywhere near third person. Not saying that we're never going to do it, it's just we want to get our priorities right, and right now we want to create a pop quality product with first person and shooter, and then that extending to RPG and puzzle. So hopefully that's clear. Here's a question from CJ. In Max with multi-level games, death means game over. Classic had lives, but games these days don't tend to have life counter. And will there be any? Will there be a way to have the level restart rather than game over? Um, yeah, I certainly agree with you that no one really does lives anymore, and for that reason, you won't find lives in GameGuru Max, just a health score. As to what happens when the player does run out of health, um, I think, yeah, I mean, restarting the level makes more sense than instantly going to game over. But perhaps that's something that we do in the game storyboard. If you don't link up a game over onto your level, perhaps it just restarts at the beginning. If you think that's a great idea, I kind of think it does. Please let me know in the forum comments. Because I usually read through the forum that I post after a couple of days in case there's any follow-up questions, and I can answer them as well. So post it there and we can maybe have a mini discussion. So the next question down is from Paul Walker. Are there no plans to have swimming in Max? No plans for swimming in the March release. You'll certainly be able to go into the water briefly, and then you'll start running out of oxygen, and then you'll start choking, and you need to get out of that water. So water right now is more of a barrier for the gameplay. Because water's such an important and large, potentially huge module, we're going to leave more sophisticated swimming and underwater and water effects and other things with water in the title to the future. For now, consider the current water in Max as basically a barrier for the gameplay. Next question down is from Bob the Sorry Games. From Sorry Games, sorry. Any chance for a modular object creator? A la building creator. There already is. Well, I say there is. There's the structure editor that you can find in developer mode that allows you to create simple structures, albeit static structures, but you could create objects of a sort. But I suppose what you're meaning is dynamic objects, objects you can piece together. We have something called smart objects, where you can take groups of bits of objects and then connect them together to create a larger composite object that you can then drag in as one of your prefabs straight into your level. We're going to do a tutorial on smart objects at some point, so definitely keep an eye out for that term. Check out the video and learn how to do that. And that should take you some part way through. As for, are we going to create a whole 3D modeler? No. One of the things we're going to attempt to do is not reinvent the wheel. If someone's done a better music program or a sound program, a 3D modeler or an animator, use those tools. Those tools have been developed over years and years and years. They do a really good job at it. There's no point us doing a half-baked effort to try and create that functionality. Just go out and find the right tool for the job, bring in that asset, and then GameGuru MAX will make sure that it can turn that asset into part of your game and your gameplay. So just checking the clock, we've done the official minutes, we've done the unofficial minutes. So as is my custom, I'm going to look for 2 questions from people who haven't asked me a question yet. And I'll prioritise those, and the rest, of course, I'll answer later on in the GameGuru forums. So do we have a... Sorry, Nomad, you've asked your question. Anybody else? Keith C hasn't asked. Okay, any plans on creating a decent bridge between Blender and Max? Something more seamless. Know exactly what you mean. Right now, you can still use Blender, but you're exporting things like OBJs, some variants of FBX, and perhaps even GLTF, although I've not played with the GLTF version 2 from Blender, but I guess that's what I'd recommend if that support was there. But I know what you mean. You're talking about live exporting. So you can work in Blender, press a button, Alt-Tab to GameGuru MAX, and your model's already updated. You don't have to go through that whole import, export process. It's live. And I've seen that work with other tools. It's pretty cool. Short answer is no. For the March release, we won't have that level of Blender integration. But if there's enough people using Blender and they keep asking over and over again that they want that kind of live support within Blender, really like Blender, I think it's a great idea. So yeah, keep asking us that, and eventually it will get on the priority list and we'll make it happen. But it's not planned for the March release. So I need one more question. It looks like Nomad gets to answer after all. Any news on plans for alpha clipping ceilings in the editor? I've done a little bit of that, but I know what you mean. It's the one where you cut a plane straight through your editor scene so you can sort of slice walls, ceilings, and any other obstructions so you can sort of add objects behind that obstruction. It's not on our roadmap. We've not got any specific item for it. But I think as we go into February and we start creating more and stop adding new things, just playing with what we've got, if there's a frustration or a pain point about that and we need that clipping, then it'll probably make its way into the merch version. If not, certainly shortly afterwards. I know a few people have already been asking for that, just to make that editing process nice and smooth. So those are the two questions. The rest I will answer later in the forums, as I've said. I just want to mention before I leave that we are recruiting demo level creators right now. We want lots of demo levels for our merch release. It doesn't have to be a big level too. It can just be one level, one room, showing off something clever and cool. That's all we're really looking for. We've got a competition running, but we want to be proactive here. If you are thinking about joining the compo or you need help, just contact us and we will help you through those early steps to create a demo, and we are paying cash money for any demos that we use for the merch release. So I highly encourage you to get in contact if you're even remotely interested in knocking out a demo for us, because it also helps us test the software and we'll have a much solid product by merch. So thanks very much for listening to my little wittering onness. I'll be doing the same again next Wednesday at 4 p.m. GMT. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. I certainly have enjoyed talking. I'll speak to you all next Wednesday. So until then, I shall say goodbye.